Hi, Miss Phillips here, and today we're going to do a landscaping demo, how to paint a landscape. Now, it doesn't matter what subject matter you choose for your landscape, this basic method will work for all of them. So today, make sure you have your supplies. We're going to be working with both of our brushes, and make sure that they're nice and soft, that you got any residual stiffness out of them from the last time you painted. You're going to need a little cup of water. You're going to want to have all your paints handy. And you're also going to need a nice flat surface to paint on. Now, you want that surface to be wipeable. So if you're working on something that's going to be difficult to wipe down, I want you to put a layer of paper towel or newspaper, or it could be a piece of old cardboard, anything that's going to go beyond your surface that you're painting on, because we're going to paint right to the edge on these. So I'm just going to, something like that, just lay it down so it protects. We're going to be painting on our Bristol board. Okay, so let's get started. First thing I'm going to have you do is we're going to mix up a little light blue. So I'm going to take my white and my blue. I got that wrong. Said that backwards. My blue and my white. And you can paint or mix right into your plastic palette. Another thing that you can mix on that you might have at home is a little piece of tin foil. Or if you have it, freezer paper works really great. Freezer paper is actually same thing they sell as palette paper in an art store. But tin foil can work, or aluminum foil can work in a pinch. So I'm going to take some blue. Now you're going to use more paint than you think. So as you paint this landscape, you're going to have to really, you might have to force yourself into using a little more paint than you're, than you're used to. Now I'm just going to wipe off a little of that. Get some white going here and mix them up. Okay, so when we're painting a landscape, the first place we're going to start is the background. You paint back to front. So the very first thing I'm going to paint is my sky. So I'm going to come along and I want nice, long, horizontal strokes because I want to keep this kind of flat visually. Starting at the very top of my board and I'm working my way down. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of toning the canvas. I'm not really putting any detail in at this point. I just want to go long strokes side to side. And I'm going to take that all the way down my board. Okay, and I'm going to do this in real time. You guys can follow along with me. At the beginning of the tape, pause and get all your materials that you need. But once we start going, I want you to just kind of, you can follow along with me. You can stop the tape at any time. Okay. And I want to come down at least halfway, past halfway on my board. All right. You could even paint the entire board, and that would be fine. I still have some paint, so I'm going to keep going here. If you have to mix your color again, if you didn't make enough paint the first time, it's okay. Just try and get it close, but it doesn't have to match exactly. We're not We want some variations in there a little bit. Okay, so now I have essentially my sky. If I wanted to, I can come back. Mix just a little bit of a darker blue, and I can place that right at the very top of my board. So you can see I've painted the majority of my board here. Now in this painting, I'm going to have some wispy kind of cirrus clouds. Those are the ones that they're there, but they're not really truly formed looking clouds. But I want to have an indication of clouds. So I'm going to clean off my brush, take most of the blue out. I'm just wiping it on some paper towel over here. All right, water, and then roll and squeeze to kind of clean the brush. I'm going to take a little bit of white. Now you'll want to do this while your paint is still a little bit wet. And I'm going to come in, and again, side to side, I'm going to brush in some white. I want it to be thicker in areas and thinner in areas. So I'm going to do that. Another one up in here. And you will have to kind of feel your way through this, but we're just going to make some kind of cirrus clouds. So I lay down the white and I like things in threes, so I'm going to put one more, a little bit here. Okay, now while it's still wet, I'm going to clean my brush again. So I'm working with as clean a brush as possible, no blue, no white. And I'm going to use this as a blender. Now, if you have an extra brush, you could use that as a blender, then you wouldn't have to keep cleaning off. But I'm working with the materials I sent home with you so that I make sure that you all have access to the same materials. But if you have your own brushes at home and you can play around with more brushes, that is actually very handy for an artist. But see, I'm just kind of blending it out. So I want them there. I'm going to leave that one a little thicker. But think of it as the wind is always moving. And when the wind moves, it moves the clouds. So your brush is playing the part of the wind. Your clean blending brush. Okay. And there again, you can decide how many clouds you want, whether you want to add any others. I think I might put a little bit of row right here at the top. So again, I'm going to take a little white, add it up in there. So the blue is our backdrop of our sky. Then the clouds come on. That's the next layer. And we're making cirrus clouds. I will show you at the end of the video how to make other types of clouds. Okay, so we've got a little interest in our sky. The next thing we're going to determine is where our horizon line is in this piece. Now, I would say the one place you want to avoid is direct center. That's just compositionally, it's not good to cut things off right in the middle. So I'm going to go below center. And I'm going to paint my horizon line right about here. Okay. Now I've indicated where my horizon line is, but I'm going to use a little green because we're going to be painting kind of a mountain scene on this one. I will also show you how to do an ocean scene, but this one we're going to do a little mountain scene. So I'm going to take a little green, and this is the green straight out of the out of your container. I'm not changing it in any way here. And I'm just going to indicate where that line is. Okay. Now we're going to paint some mountains in the background. So I want my mountains to look like they're farther away. So again, we paint back to front. So I'm going to paint my back mountains first. So I'm going to mix up a little gray. So I'm going to take a little black, take a little white, okay, I want to dull these out and I want them to be light. So I'm going to mixing up a light gray. I'm going to put a little of our green in there. So we begin to create a tone of the color. Okay. And now I'm going to place my mountains. Remember, just like with pencil strokes, our brush strokes, the brain reads them and interprets them. So I'm going to paint some diagonals here. And I'm not painting straight, I'm actually pouncing because I want to have a little texture. Oh, let's see. Just going to paint a back mountain here. Don't worry if I go over my horizon line. It doesn't make any difference at this point. That first line was just a kind of indication to me to where I wanted those mountains. Okay, so I think I'll put one over here too. Now you can make your mountains different sizes. I'm just going to keep mine kind of small because I want those to be in the back. Now at the same time I'm doing this, I have to decide where's my light source. Because I want them to have a little dimensionality. So I'm going to say my light is coming from this side. So I'm going to put, and I'm going to do this while my paint is kind of wet. Just going to pounce a little light along the edge. Now, mountains are not just, they're not just big triangles. There's lots of arroyos and canyons in them. So I'm going to put some little white other places. Now, I've been working with the big brush this whole time. I'm going to continue to do that, but if you felt more comfortable, this is where you could work with your smaller brush if you wanted smaller lines. But don't be too concerned at this layer because this is just, again, these are going to get covered a little bit. This is like a backup as we work back to front. So I'm going to... Okay, so put a little more white here. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of that on this one over here. And again, just kind of wherever you feel like a little light would be hitting. You know. And you can try, I'm trying two different styles here. This one I'm going a little more vertical. This one I'm going a little more horizontal as I do it. Just to show you there's variation. And however your brush strokes work, you know, brush strokes are like, they're like the way we write. They're personal. So yours will look different than mine. But basically we want to have a light side and we want to have a dark side. So on the dark side, I'm going to put a little more green into it. And just a tiny touch of black. Not too much because I don't want it to be too dark. I'm going to come in and kind of put some shadow side on it. And you can put those shadows in to the crevices. Okay. Now you want to keep kind of building up the mountain, so I'm going to put some little darker ones here in front. And again, I'm making mine look like they're kind of farther away. But there's no, let's see, how should I say it? There's no real rules here other than we're painting back to front. Let's see, make a little greener one here. So I'm adding my pure color, kind of taking that tone away. You can see the difference. I'm going to put some like little foothills here. Now, as you are working, you have control. I think I'm going to add another mountain. I think I want a higher one back here. So I'm going to really gray something out here. And just to show you that even though we work back to front, you always have control. The thing about paint, and the thing I really love about paint, is it does allow you to play a lot. So I'm going to add another mountain. I'm going to make this one taller, I think. So I'm just going to paint right over it. Okay, I'm going to put another one back there behind it. I'm going to gray it out more, some more white. Now I'm going to paint right on top of these a little bit just because I always want the front ones to look like they're overlapping. So put that in. Okay, so I wanted a little more depth in there, but I still need to come back and play around with the light side. So as you're painting, let yourself have some freedom when you paint, because you really don't know until you start putting the brush strokes on where you're going to go with it. Even when you have a reference in front of you and you're looking at it, remember, it's always about the painting. That's the important thing. So if you feel it needs something, like my reference did not have these big mountains in the background, but I feel I want them. I'm just going to play until I get those mountains the way I want them right now. And it's pretty monochromatic. I'm just really working with gray and, green, I should say, and white and black. Now we could also mix up greens, and I suggest you do that. So I'm going to mix up a green here. I'm using my primaries, yellow and blue. Oh, when you're not using your brush, leave it in your cup of water. Acrylic paint dries very quickly on a brush and will do bad things to your brush. So I'm going to take a little of my yellow, a little of my blue, and mix up a green. And it's going to be a different green. That gives me a variety of greens to play with. My blue and yellow together make a much deeper, richer green. And I'm going to use that in here. I'm going to kind of pounce in here, and I'm going to indicate a row of trees. So I'm just kind of pouncing. I'll let myself come over my blue line here. Notice that's another reason to start your horizon line above where you end your blue. And it's another good reason to actually bring the blue all the way down. Okay, so I'm just kind of I'm just going up and down and pouncing some green in here. I'm not trying to actually paint trees. Okay, I'm just making an indication that there's something here that goes up and down. Because my brain and your brain will figure it out. Most of the time when we're painting a landscape, it's better to just indicate things rather than to try and make them look quote unquote real. Okay. Now I just noticed my mountain just kind of stops there. I got to fix that. I let it just kind of go into nothing. So I'm just going to take a little of my gray color and just take it off the edge here. I should put a little darker gray over there anyway. So sometimes I find when I forget something, it's just probably my subconscious way of reminding me to do something. So I'm gonna have a little dark edge here. And I want to bring a little more green onto this one here. Okay, now if I put a little pure green up here, the brain is probably going to read that as some sort of trees or something growing on the mountain. Okay, we've been hearing about how cold everything is right now, so I think I'm going to add a little snow into this scene, just a little bit, just to kind of indicate that those mountains are tall. I'm going to put just a little snow on the peaks of them. Now I don't want to use pure white because that would be a little jarring. So I'm going to take some white and I'm just going to make an extremely light gray. Okay, I want a little bit of gray in it. So I'm mixing up a very, very light gray. It's going to look almost like white, but just a little gray in it, and I'm going to put a little tiny bit of blue into it. I'm going to come in and pounce a little snow at the top of my mountain. Okay, maybe a little bit over here. You're usually going to have more snowpack on the shadow side of the mountain because the sun, of course, melts snow. So I'm going to lay a little bit more on the darker side of my mountain. But I want to keep it up toward the top. And again, I wish I could give you guys rules on exactly how much to do and everything, but there are no rules. That's why art is so much fun, because it is individualized. And you just have to kind of play what works for you. And again, if you don't like something, heck, you paint over it. Now, see, I got too much over here. I'm going to put a little green on top of that. I'm going to put just a little spot of pure white on the sunny side of the snow. might come back to that. I don't know. I'm gonna let it go for a minute. Just gonna blend that out. I'll put some green in there. Okay, but I'm gonna stop because one of the things I should tell you to do, and I have a tendency to break my own rules on this one, is don't over fuss, okay? And like I say, sometimes I get into my own things and I start over fussing with details, and that's not what I should be doing. So I'm gonna teach you guys the right way. Now what we're gonna do here is we're gonna paint a lake. So we're gonna come in with a little bit of a color that matches our sky. Doesn't have to be exact. All right, nothing has to be exact. But right along in here, we're gonna have a little bit of a lake. So I'm gonna come in and add a little blue in here. And again, I'm going side to side. Okay, that's about as much lake as I'm gonna have, I think. Should I leave it going over there? You can make your own decisions. I'm gonna, I know I want a lake at least on part of it, so I don't know. As you can see, when I'm painting, I have to make the same decisions you guys do. Let's see. I'll just do it now for now because I can always paint over it. So there's my lake. Now, lakes have reflections. So I'm going to reflect my mountains into my lake. Not going to reflect them and paint them perfectly or anything, but I just want to have a little indication of some type of mountain going on in here. So I'm gonna lay a little gray-green. And I'm gonna do that over here. So I'm just kind of reflecting back that shape of the mountains. Okay, don't have to get it all perfect because we're going to come over it anyway. I do want to reflect a little dark side. Ooh, that got a little too dark there. So that was too much paint, so I just wiped it off on my brush a little bit. A little dark over here. So you're kind of reflecting back a little bit of what you see, what you did on your mountains up here. Now we're going to come in and we're going to tap a little of that green going down. So that was the green I made with my yellow and blue. So I'm just going to mix up a little more of it. And I'm just going to tap a little bit down. Okay. Now we're going to let that dry for a second. And while that is drying, we're going to come down and start working the foreground of our painting. And what I want you to do is I want you to take your bigger brush and we're going to start laying in some greens in here because we're going to kind of do a spring scene here. So I need you to mix up a whole bunch of variations on green. So I'm going to start with my yellow and blue. Okay, I'm gonna do another one of, I'm just mixing them up in here. I want to have a variety of greens to work with. So I'm going to add more yellow to some of them and make them lighter or a more yellow green. I'm going to leave more blue in them and have like a blue green. I'm going to take mix some white in there so it gets much lighter and I have a tint of the green. Basically, I want to have a whole bunch of greens to work with here. Well, let's see. Maybe a more yellow green. Because it is a spring scene, so I want some yellow greens. Okay. Once I've got some greens, I'm not even going to clean my brush from mixing this time. I'm going to take my darker green and I'm going to start pouncing. So I'm not going side to side now. I'm going to start pouncing those colors in. I want to go up and overlap wherever I ended my blue. Now, if you took your blue all the way to the bottom, that's great. Just decide where you want your land to be. And we're pouncing. I'm not going to mix those colors because I want them to stay different. Now this is going to be our first layer, so I would work with your bigger brush. At this point, you could work with the smaller one too. Just take you a little bit longer. Pouncing, 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 pouncing. Okay, and I think I'm going to need to mix a little more. I think I'm actually going to put some more really blue-green in there too. So pounces just up and down. So you notice when we painted our landscape, we started at the top and we're working our way down. We worked back objects, we're working our way forward. Now my board is beginning to curl a little bit because it's picking up the moisture from the paint. Don't worry about that. When it's all done, they will dry back out and lay flat. Or you can gently roll them back flat at the end once you're done painting. Now that won't happen obviously when you're working on stretched canvas or canvas board. And if you've got your own canvas or canvas board, feel free to use that. I just, because of budget concerns, could only send home Bristol board this quarter. Okay. Now, I've laid in just some greens, a variety of greens. Now I'm going to take some of those lighter greens that I mixed up, my lighter yellow greens, and I'm going to add those as well. It's kind of random because you're mimicking all the different grasses and plants that would be growing in a meadow. So you don't want it to be too perfect. You want to allow yourself some play. If you think an area, like I'm going to make an area, I think here that's too blotchy, just to show you. If I get an area I think is too much, I'll put some more in there. All I have to do to break it up is to put some of my other color in with it. But we're kind of indicating that there's different plant life growing, so we want to have a variety of those greens. And try rotating your brush so you're not always pouncing in one direction so that you get different sizes of your stroke. And the fun thing is you can play with color because you wouldn't think so, but we can put red into this. And let me see, what did I do with my red? say that, and then I've moved my red paint somewhere. Okay, I had to stop the tape there because I had misplaced my red. Red is complementary to green, so it will often help to take a little bit of a pink, a really light tint of your red. So I'm going to mix up a light tint here. And you wouldn't think about it, but when you have so much green in a painting, if you can tap a little of pink in there, now you can leave it and have it look like flowers, or we can kind of subdue it. But by putting a little pink, anytime you have a lot of green in a painting, it gives the eye a chance to rest, because we're taking in so much green that it's very soothing to see the opposite color. And again, I could leave that. I kind of like it as flowers. So I think I'll leave some of it, and then I'll show you how to subdue some of it. So I'm going to have a whole field of pink flowers here. So I'm going to have a couple different versions of my pink. Again, I don't want to just have one if I'm painting flowers. And flowers in this landscape are just going to be little dots of color. Okay, I could even add some yellow flowers. Flowers come in almost every color, even some blue ones, although that's kind of the more rare color. And I'm just pouncing. But again, you don't have to be perfect. I'm not going to try and draw individual flowers. I'm just going to pounce. Groups of flowers, the random flower. Anytime I think I've got too much, I'm just going to switch my brush or clean my brush, either one, and come in with a little of my greens. And we can subdue something right away. So it's about layering and playing till you get a nice meadow, nice spring meadow. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some birch trees to this. And I'm going to make my birch trees really tall. And birch trees are basically, we're going to start off with some white lines. So I'm going to use my bigger brush, I think. And I'm going to come along with a little white. I'm going to start one of my trees. Again, back to front. So the trees that are farther away from me, I'm going to start right here in my meadow. And I'm just going to make a line going up. And I think I'm going to take them all the way to the top of my paper right now, of my board. Okay. And I'm going to pull my painting down so you can see I went all the way to the top. I'm going to take another one, leave a little space, do that same thing. And I'm putting a little pressure on the brush so it goes a little bit fatter as it goes up. I'm going to come over and again, I like things in threes. I'm going to have one that's kind of growing a little bit on a diagonal. I'm just going to come up. Okay. Now this one I made a little bit thicker because it's a little closer to me. Okay. So we're going to be standing in these birch trees looking out over the lake and to the mountains. Okay. So I'm going to let those dry just a little bit. While those are drying, I'm going to come back to my finish off my lake. Okay. So all we have to do is put a little wash on our lake. So I want you to take some water and get some clean water, because right now I don't want to use this water because it's pretty much been muddied up by my paint colors. I want a little clean water. Okay, a little clean water. Don't need much. And I'm going to put some white paint into it. I'm going to make a little wash of white paint. And when I say wash, we're just thinning it out with a little water. Okay. We're going to make kind of a glaze. And we're going to brush it on to our lake. We're going to go right to where the edge of the other side is. And you can go right over these trees right now, because we only have the first layer on our trees. See how it kind of gives the lake kind of a glassy feel. And just kind of throw a couple in there. And you can take even a little more white. Just make sure it's pure white. And we can throw like a little reflective edge into the lake. Okay. Okay, so we've got our lake. Let's see, I think I got a little too much there. So if I get too much, just layer a little blue over it and it'll be gone. That is why I love to paint. No rules, or I should say nothing that can't be fixed. Okay, so now I'm going to come around, and now that I've established where my lake is, I'm going to put a little more green overlapping it, because I want this foreground to look like it's in front of the lake. Okay, so our birch trees, they don't need a whole lot of time to dry. In fact, they're probably dry enough now. So I'm going to start detailing them a little bit. I'm going to have another layer here because I don't want to be able to see through them. They shouldn't look transparent. And I'm just kind of putting a base of white on here. I'm going to leave, I have a little tonal gray going from when I wiped them up, so I'm going to leave a little of that. But the main thing is to get a little white going up. We just don't want to be able to see through them, right? Because they're opaque objects. And that's really important down here when we're covering the lake and the mountains, not so much when we get up toward the sky. Okay, now the next thing we want to do is determine our light and our dark side. So I'm going to mix up a little gray. Now if you want a brown and you don't have brown paint, just mix your three primary colors together and add white. That's one way of getting a nice kind of a sienna brown. I'll show you a little bit of that one here. Okay, it's got a little reddish tone to it, so I could neutralize that by adding a little more yellow and blue. Or you can mix complementary colors together to create a neutral or a brown. Just to show you how to make a brown there. I'm going to show you, I'm going to make one with, let's see. Let's take some of our green and add a little red to it. Again, another way to make a brown. You could add a little bit of black to it and a little white to it. So right now I'm looking for a neutral color. Kind of like this one. And this is the one I mixed with red and green, a little black, a little brown, white. And we're going to come up in, birch trees have these little lines in them. Now you could also do this in more of a gray if you like. So I'll show you that too. We're just going to come in and make little, we're going to put a little dark edge. Sorry, sometimes this camera thing gets in my way here. But their bark kind of splits away. So we're just gonna put some curved lines and just some of our neutral in here. And again, be random. Every tree is unique. No two trees will be exactly alike. They all have these kind of rings in them, but where you place them, that is completely up to you. I like to place them as I'm doing my dark edge on my tree. Now, if you have a smaller brush, this is a good time to use a smaller brush on that smaller tree. And I think I did send home smaller brushes, so I'm gonna put them out here. I'm gonna keep that line kind of thin. Okay, so that's kind of layer one. Then I'm going to keep going over that and playing around with adding a little white back to it. A A little mid-tone in here. Ooh, let's see, I made that too wide there, but you know what? That's a wabi-sabi moment. I'm gonna go with it. My tree bulges a little bit there. Sometimes you have to embrace what fate gives you. So you notice the detail comes at the end. We start with the big things like the sky and the ground, and then the detail like on our trees. That's going to be the last things we were doing. Now we can make up a warm white, which is a tiny bit of yellow and a lot of white. Okay. As you can see, I have a tendency to really contaminate my white, so I'm having to kind of dig through it to get some fresh white. So we're just going to say this is where the sun is hitting it a little bit. We're going to put a little more. Just a little stronger warmth to it. Okay. Now, again, now it's just plain. I don't like that solid line I have there on this tree, so I'm going to add some more white and kind of break that up a little bit. If you want to do, a lot of times you see birch trees just like this. If you would like to do branches, the way you're going to do branches is you're going to just start off and start a little bit, almost make like a little triangle, a little thicker, and then let it kind of begin to thin out. So we can add branches to our trees. So I'm going to put some branches over here on the diagonal one. Start quite a ways up your trunk. They don't usually have branches down at the lower part on this particular type of tree. So the branches are going to be more at the top of the painting. Now you'll notice right now I'm just starting their white, and I'll go back and detail them. So I'm going to put some over here. Again, that little triangle for the growth spurt from the tree, and then you can branch them as much as you'd like. Put as many twigs on as you would like. Make sure I'm on the camera here. So your assignment this week is going to be doing a practice landscape with me. You're all going to paint your version of this painting. And again, I say version because they'll all be a little different. We can have some of our branches go a little flatter. Okay, this tree looks like it's in front of this one, so I'm gonna let the branch go right in front of it. Okay. Once I have the branches that I want, then I'm gonna come along and detail them. This is where I'm gonna need my small brush because I wanna have a dark side. Okay. And again, I don't have to outline them completely. I just want to indicate that dark side. I decided to put a few more little dark lines in that tree. Okay, I can play around with a little light side. Bring all that white down in here. So anywhere the light is hitting it, I can make it a little bit. Cast a little light on it. Okay, now I want to come down here and play a little bit where the trunks go into my foliage. I'm just going to come in and pounce a little bit around them because I want to make it look like they're kind of in there. Back and get some of my green. You just don't want to have an even edge. You want to have it look like it's going down and up. We can take take our thin brush. And we could have some plant growing up around it. Just kind of want to indicate like almost like a little grass like going on there. So I'm just going to throw in a couple lines in with my pounces, just to create different textures. I could use that to create like little stalks for some of the flowers. Again, I'm not trying to indicate individual flowers, but just kind of give the brain enough textural ideas that it knows what's happening here. Okay. So that's pretty much the basics of painting a landscape. You start with the top of your border canvas. You're going to come down and tone it. You're toning it with the major colors that you're going to be using. You're going to come in and decide where your horizon line is and establish what's in the far background. For example, we have the mountains in the far background. Then you're going to come down, and only then are you going to start working the foreground and deciding what's closest to you and where the detail is. After that, it's just a matter of playing. I think I'm going to add a little bit of a blue-gray I think I need to show a little bit of that snow on my mountain there. In my reflection. Okay. And again, it's just playing. And so have fun with it. So this week, this is your assignment. You're going to paint a landscape. And I will also put up a video on how to paint an ocean scene. And I'll have that up for you by the end of the week. So over the weekend, if you would like to paint another one. One is required. 2 is better, right? Because that's just extra practice. And then next week, you're going to choose your own scene after you've done the practice one, and you're going to paint your own landscape, your own choice. Now, I'm going to say I could leave this painting just as it is. I don't have to put leaves on these, but I'm going to show you how to do leaves if you choose to do leaves. Again, you're not going to paint each individual leaf. What you are going to do is take, again, a series of greens. I'm going to mix up a little light green here, a light blue-green, I should say. And just like everything else, we paint back to front. So my first leaves are kind of toned out. They've got a little bit of gray in them. And we're going to pounce. Same technique that we were doing down here. Now I'm using greens. If I switch these to oranges and reds, we could make a fall scene. So I'm going to make this part spring and this part fall. You can leave them without leaves, or you can play around with leaves. It's completely up to you. But I'm going to start with my toned, and I'm just pouncing. Okay, and then I'm going to start going into a richer green. And I'm going to pounce that in. Then I'm going to go into kind of a yellow green, a bright spring green. I could even put pure yellow in there. So let me try some of that. I apologize. Our yellow is kind of funky this year. It's a little strange. You might mix it with a little white just to give it a better consistency. It's a little transparent, but it'll work. So I'm going to put a little yellow in there. Okay. So the idea is I'm not just using one color, and I'm working to my brightest, lightest. I start with the dull, go to the pure color, and start working my way towards the lighter colors, or the brighter colors. Okay, so I can add some leaves. Again, if it's fall, I can start putting in a little orange. Okay, so I'm going to change the seasons here. Okay, so now we have spring. Okay, now it's fall. We don't get this here in San Diego County too much, but most of the country gets what we call deciduous trees like these. And the leaves turn yellows and oranges and reds and fall off. So I'm going to start with some yellows. I'm going to add some reds. Now my pure red is a little too too much, so I'm going to add a little green into there to kind of counteract it. So we'll say some leaves are still, they haven't changed yet. But that will counteract some of that red. But it's really just about keeping it loose, kind of pouncing them in. You're not trying to paint every leaf. You never are. You're just kind of indicating where the leaves are, and then you let the brain fill it in for people. Okay, so have fun with it. I can't wait to see when you finish. You're going to upload it for me, and that's your assignment for this week, as well as looking through references to find what landscape you want to paint. But whatever it is, whether it is an ocean scene, you're at the beach, you're at the mountains, wherever you are, you're in the jungle, it's going to start the same way. You're going to start with your sky, indicate where your background is in your horizon line, and then start painting back to front. So have fun.